Thank you everyone for joining this full Sandbox Anonymization Data App webinar. Today with me, I have Paul Young. Paul.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Harold. I'm very excited to be here and going over a particularly interesting product offering from Otiseva. Could you go ahead and hit the next slide, please, Harold?
Sure.
All right. Now you get to see what we look like. I think Harold may be the sharper dresser, but that's me. And go one more slide, please.
Sure.
All right, confidentiality and disclaimer. What you hear today may include confidential information, and please make all buying decisions based on currently available software and not something a tricky sales guy might tell you. So with that out of the way, let's go to the next slide.
Sure. And actually, Paul, actually, we didn't tell who we are. I mean, I said who you are, but I didn't say who I am. So
you're absolutely right.
Right.
Who
so
are you,
my name
Harold?
is Yeah. So I will introduce myself, Harold Lopez, customer success technologist at Otiseva. And so, yeah, that's it.
And I will let you all in on a secret. Harold knows pretty much everything. He's been here for a long time and is a great guy to work with. And if he is on one of your accounts, you're in great hands. As for myself, I am a account manager, account executive, aka the sales guy. My claim to fame is I have been doing this for about 17 years in the Salesforce ecosystem, and I've seen a lot of products come and go. But full sandbox anonymization is one that I am particularly excited by and interested in. And I hope to convey some of that to you today. And I think you're going to be interested in what you're going to see here. All right. The basic premise is full sandboxes require the same attention as a production org. At face value, that seems kind of silly because a sandbox is just that. You can mess it up, you can blow it up, you can do whatever to it, and it doesn't hurt anything, except it's a full copy. Back when I was a consultant, before I joined this company, I had a very large, very security conscious client. I'm not going to name any names. And they said to me, Paul, you're a consultant. We can't give you access to production. But what we're going to do is go ahead and give you your credentials to our full copy sandbox. Go to town. I opened it up, and to my great amazement, it had things like the salary history for everyone in the company. It had social security numbers, credit cards. It had test results for confidential medical procedures. It was horrifying. When we say the same attention, that's why. We're going to show you an app today that's going to not only give you the ability to protect that data in the sandbox from prying eyes, but it's going to make sure that you can save on operational costs by being able to test your automation, test your processes in an equivalent, safe environment. Next slide, please.
Sure.
Okay. I think at this point, I'm going to hand it back to my friend Harold, and he is going to walk you through exactly how this works. But this first slide is an important thing to remember. What we're talking about today is the fact that your sandbox is the same as your production, the same risks. If you would not give a stranger access to your production, why would you possibly do it to your sandbox? With that, Harold, I'm going to hand this back to you and let you do your technical amazing stuff.
Thank you. So, as everyone knows, a Salesforce full sandbox inherits of the data from the production it is generated from. This is common knowledge across everyone who works in the Salesforce environment. So this means that all the personal, real data from customers that you have in a production environment will end up populating that full sandbox environment. So this means that this environment is going to be exposed. Is going to be exposing data to other audiences potentially that are not necessarily running the business, but who need to have access to a Salesforce environment with data for different reasons. The different kind of audiences that can be developers, it can be project managers, training teams, etc. I mean, you have a large range of populations that can access a Salesforce environment. So it's your responsibility to ensure the confidentiality of that customer personal data, right? So When it revolves to, when we start talking about sandbox anonymization patterns, or when we talk about sandbox anonymization, usually customers think that is a matter of just deleting data. And this is something that we have been trying to create some awareness on in the marketplace, that is not a matter of just deleting data. Because when you lose the data, when the data is deleted, you basically lose it permanently. So our approach is to say that you can take you can actually decide to anonymize the data and just target the personal information that you have in the Salesforce environment and anonymize that data. So that is the example, that is what we would apply to to certain objects in Salesforce, like contact, user, leads, tasks, and events. This is something we will demonstrate in a few minutes. But then at the same time you do that, you can also decide that you are going to delete data on certain objects. You don't necessarily need to maintain the data, because there may be objects where you don't have critical information that can actually get deleted, right? And then of course you have all the objects that where you decide not to do anything and preserve the information. Of course, it is up to you, and this is just an example. It is up to you what ultimately is going to be the decisions you make according to your industry and your use cases, right? So the full Sandbox anonymization data app is a data compliance data app that is available in Odeseva. It is in our catalog, and it allows organizations to anonymize the personal data from a full Sandbox environment. Okay, so this data app is leveraging our product architecture, and so it's something that you can install, and every time you install it, okay, you have a set of operations that you can launch, okay, and that most importantly can be customized to fit your own organization requirements and regulation needs, of course. Okay, so you're always going to have you will have 5 specific jobs that, like we call them in the Odeseva jargon, that are available to you and that are customizable. So it's actually pretty straightforward, and that's something we're going to see. We're going to see that together. Okay, how do you do this? Okay, so you basically have 4 steps to move with this. The first one is you need to install the data app from the Odeseva data app catalog. The second, you need to read the prerequisites to prepare your sandbox for anonymization. Okay, so there is a knowledge base article specifically dedicated to that, and well, dedicated to explain how the entire data app works. The third is that you can run your data app and wait for the anonymization process to be completed. And last but not least, the fourth step consists in customizing that data app to make it fit your needs. Okay, so let's review very quickly what are the prerequisites that you need to go through before you install this. Okay, and then I'm going to move very quickly to demonstrate how you can do this. The first one is you need to make sure that your Odeseva service user, this is the user that you have used to authenticate Odeseva, to authenticate your Salesforce or in Odeseva, has the bypass strategy active. Okay, this is to avoid that during the process, when you will be updating data, that you start triggering workflows, validation rules, Apex triggers, and all kinds of automation. The second prerequisite is you need to make sure that your Odeseva service user has full access on all the objects and all the fields that are in the scope. Okay, pretty straightforward. The third prerequisite is you need to make sure that you enable 2 permissions on the user interface. And the fifth, you basically need to make sure that those permissions are actually granted to the Odeseva service user. Okay, so you basically will set up, you can set up a permission set for that. And last but not least, make sure that all email services are disabled in your sandbox just for security. Okay, so it's very easy to do. You just have to go to setup email deliverability, access to send email, and make sure that it's set to no access. Okay, so we have 5 steps, and we have a demo to install. Sorry, we have a data app to install. So let's move forward. So just let me just change this here. We will come here again. So you should be seeing all my screen. So I'm going to connect to Odeseva right now So everyone knows how to do that. You connect to Odaseva, you get to this landing screen, okay? So how do you install it? Very easy, very straightforward. You just go to My Data Apps. Um, you land into My Data App screen here. So it's empty, of course, because I don't have any data apps installed. If I want to move to the catalog, I just have to click on Open Catalog at the top right-hand side corner. That is one option. Or also the other option is when you go to Configuration, you use data apps from here, okay? Both options are possible. When you're inside, you have the full Sandbox anonymization data app that is available, right? So if you don't see these options, of course, it's got to be part of the services that you have subscribed for with Odaseva. But as long as you have subscribed for it, you will have it available in your catalog. So you install it. You have this descriptive description screen. Okay, so you click on Install App. You're going to be moving to an install screen. Pretty straightforward. So here, the only thing you need to do is choose the environment that you will be targeting for anonymization. In this case, I know that I have previously authenticated this environment that's called CCSBX. All right, and then I have this name. So this is just a reference name in order for me to know that this is going to be my data app. So I'm going to call this FSA CC SBX, sorry, for the name of my sandbox, anonymization data app. So I click on confirm. Right now the data app is installing, and as you can see, the data app is totally installed. All right. So this is the installation process on the Odaseva side. All right. Now, remember that before executing this data app, there are certain steps that need to be performed on the sandbox to get it prepared for that. All right. So the first one is making sure that I have my bypass strategy in place. Right. First thing to do, I am connected here to my sandbox. I'm going to go to my user, right? Because this is the user that I have used to authenticate Odaseva, right? So it's just, this is the Odaseva service user. Okay, so I have to come here. Oops, sorry. I have to go to my user. There you go. Okay, and because of the way this demo Salesforce environment has been set up, I know, because this was implemented by our customer success and demo team, that I just have to check all these boxes at the bottom of the user, right? Depending on how your bypass strategy is implemented, you basically have to apply your own policies. Okay, so I'm going to check all those boxes, which will allow me to bypass all the validation rules, all the workflow rules, all the Apex triggers and flows during the execution of the macro. Okay, this will prevent sending emails if you have workflows associated to certain business processes, for example, or triggering alerts or validation rules that will block the process. Okay, so um, this was the first step. Okay, the second step is that I have to make sure that this user, which is myself, Harold Lopez, has access to all the data from an object level perspective and a field level security perspective. So that step has been done already prior to this meeting, because it would be extremely long to make sure, to undertake this step during the demo. So we checked this before, okay? So the third step consists on making sure that under user interface, I am enabling two permissions: delete from history, from field history, and delete from field history archive user permissions. So I'm gonna go there. I go to the setup, go to setup. Let me make this a little bit bigger, increase the size so you can see all that better. All right, so I'm in the setup of my org. Sorry, user interface. Okay, so I go down, I have to just go ahead and check the permissions. All right, it's already checked here. Perfect. Okay, and my user Okay, I have the permissions. So in the user interface, there are going to be 2 additional permissions that are going to display at the profile level. All right. So this has been done. All right. And now I have to make sure that those 2 permissions are going to be enabled for the AutoSave user. Right. So I go to the users. Okay. And I'm going to review. I'm going to double check that my user has those permissions, all right? As I have a system administrator profile, that's not something I can assign. So I will need a permission set for that. So I will go to permission sets. And I just have to create a new permission set. Okay, just save it. All right, perfect. And now I need to go to system permissions. And I'm just going to check those 2 boxes. Okay, it's taking a little bit. So I do edit. Oh, sorry, no, I'm trying to find delete. There you go. Those are the 2 permissions that I need to add. You see, enable delete from field history and enable delete from field history archive, okay? In a usual, in a standard Salesforce environment, those 2 permissions are needed in order for you to be able to delete the history records, the history that is generated when you modify fields, right? The field history tracking, those are the ones that are going to be, that you will be able to delete with those 2 permissions. And most importantly, I need to go and manage the assignments. So I need to make sure that I'm giving this permission to my user. Okay, I'm going to give it to my user here, and I'm going to assign it. And that's it. Okay, and under setup email deliverability, you need to make sure that there are no emails. So this also was verified before this session. So in other words, right now, I just perform all the steps that are required in order to execute the data app. Okay, so just let me now move to the Sandbox itself. I have this app that's called Global Corp app. Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm going to display the leads, and I'm going to open other records in a few more tabs. Okay. Okay. So I have all these leads. I have all these contacts. Okay. Give me just one moment. So now that my data app is installed, all I need to do is just click on launch. Launch the data app. Okay. So when this is when I click on launch, if I go at the bottom of the application of the data app, I can see there is a new line underneath under macro runs. If I click on this, I will be able to see the execution of the different operations. So if you notice carefully, every one of those operations is actually performing one specific step, right? So the first action is going to extract the data that is intended to be anonymized. The second operation is going to actually anonymize the data according to some predefined anonymization patterns. Okay, and last but not least, the data that's being generated is going to be propagated. Okay, at the fourth step, we will extract the data that needs to be deleted, and then we will going to finally delete the data based on that specific backup. All right. So just now, let me refresh this a little bit to see how this is going. Okay. So this is now finished. So if I come here and now I refresh my screen, you will see that the names change. And if I check my contacts and do the same, you can see that the names change as well. All right. All right, perfect. But so it's as easy as that. When you install the FSA data app out of the box, it works in a specific perimeter of objects and fields that have been predefined. It's as easy as that. So you see that the data is actually anonymized. So it's actually pretty straightforward. But now you may wonder, how can you customize this, right? So I'm going to demonstrate very quickly a few operations that can be performed, right? If you look carefully here on my contact object, I have this number that's called a passport number, and I can actually see that for every one of those, um, contacts, I have a passport number. All right. So for those passport numbers, I want to make sure that I am going to anonymize them. So I can just go ahead to the data app and perform the necessary changes on the data app to anonymize that field. So all I need to do is just go to the data app, right? Remember, the operations perform in different steps, right? So you have the backup that is extracting that. So I first need to make sure that in my backup, I am going to be extracting the data that is being stored in that field. So I go to the backup job in the template. It's going to be the backup template job. Okay, so I'm going to modify this. I will just go to the section where I'm specifying which fields are actually going to be anonymized. Oops, I'm missing a comma here. Okay, so I just have to go under the section for that specific object, and I just need to add the API name of that specific field, all right, under the contact. Okay, so I go up. So now that I know that my extraction will bring that field in the backup, I have to go to the transform data job, and I have to define how this information is going to be transformed. Okay, so I will edit this job again, and here I will just need to add to contact the specific parameter I want to apply to transform this. So it's up to me how I do this. One possible way to do this would be by creating a concatenation, or basically by hard coding a specific value. If you would like to hard code a value, you would have just to enter concatenation and the separators the way they are. And I could do something like anonymize passport here, okay? And just save it. So every time the macro will run, that number that you will have in the context is going to be replaced by a string called anonymized passport. Then there is just one additional step that is needed because I extracted the field. I have determined how I'm going to modify it. But finally, I need to make sure that I'm going to be propagating that, because remember that the transform data operation is transforming the data in Odaseva, but not in the Salesforce org. So I just need to go to the job, the update job, and I need to include that field as part of the fields that are going to be updated by that operation. So whoops. So I just need to add my field, passport number _ C. That's the field name, and then use value, this kind of syntax to say that it's the value that it's stored in that reference job. Okay, in the previous transform data job. If you look this job name, right, it's actually referencing the transform data job that I just edited. So I'm just going to save it now. All right. And okay, so this is it. Those were the only 3 steps I needed in order to edit, in order to anonymize this passport number, all right? Something before I execute this, I would like to bring your attention on is on the fact that actually in the macro, the operations are referencing each other. So the first operation that is executed, this one here, the backup, this backup is actually something that we're going to be referencing in this transform data job. So actually this transform data job is using this backup job, and then this update job is referencing the transform data, okay? So they're all referencing each other. All right, I'm not gonna save the changes. So it's loading now. And guess what? It's now just a matter of launching the application again, the data app again. So I'm just going to launch it, confirm. So this is triggering a second execution of the macro. So it's executing again. Of course, by executing the macro again, that means that all the data is actually going to be handled again. This is a choice I just made. Okay, so you see it's extracting everything again, and the same operations are going to roll out again. So on top, this time, the passport number is going to change, but again, the names are going to change, the emails are going to change. So let's just wait a little bit for this to be finished. All right, it's finished. At this stage, I noticed that the update job is finished. Even if there are other operations that are actually performing on the background, at this stage, I know that my anonymized data has been propagated. So it's good enough. I could just go ahead here and refresh my screen, and you will see that passport number is going to start changing to the anonymized passport that I just defined. Straightforward, right? It's pretty straightforward, okay? Now, let's take another example and think that you will, this full sandbox anonymization that I have, the way it is out of the box, it is covering a specific scope of objects that are covered, right? So right now, it's covering, in terms of structure, it's covering contact, lead, user, event, and task for anonymization. And the objects that are being deleted are the history tables, just we mentioned that already, the attachments that are related to contact and lead, and the feed items that are related to contact and lead as well, right? So in terms of the operations, this is the way those operations are performing, right? But the objects that are being, that are covered by the FSA data app are just this. Let's presume that you would like to expand the scope of this and you would like to anonymize also some information on the account object, okay? So this is also something that you could do very quickly, okay? So let me just do it. Let me just take one example here. So we're going to say that I'm going to anonymize these accounts, okay? The accounts. So I basically have to proceed pretty much in the same way, okay? So I will go to my data app one more time. From my data app, I'm going to add that object and those fields. I'm going to make sure that I'm extracting both. So I have to go to my job. In my job, under the included fields by object parameter, I'm going to add one more. Okay, so here I'm specifying that I'm going to be adding the ID, the name of the account, the phone, the fax, and the website. Okay, and then I also have to go down to the scope of this job, and I have to add account here. With the right spelling is better, and with the comma at the top. Okay, now I can save it. So I will be extracting those fields from that object in that job. Now I have to determine how are those fields going to be transformed? What are going to be the anonymization patterns we will apply for those? Okay, so I will just come here and I will add this section, and here I will start doing the same. So in this case, I can say that for name, for account name, I will use one of the anonymization libraries that Autoseva proposes that it's called companies. For phone, I will do the same. There is a library called phones already, okay? For fax, I could use the same library, okay? And for website, I can say that I'm going to hard code something here make it up. And I can call this anonymized.com. Okay. Oops, I have a little problem in my JSON. Hang on a second. Give me just 1 second. I'm missing something here. Something is not right in my JSON. Hang on a second. Oops, sorry, of course. Beginner errors. Some quotes that were missing. All right, so now, well, beginners or demo effect. It depends how you take it. So now you can save this job. And last but not least, you have to perform the same action. You have to go ahead and include those fields in the job that is propagating the data back to the sandbox. So I have my job here. I'm adding this extra section for the account where I am stating basically the API names of those fields that I just added. Okay, so, oh, it says nothing to save. Oh, did I already do that? There is still something. Oh yeah, of course. There was an extra comma. Okay, so let me just review the format here. Okay, perfect. So I will just save this. Okay, and that's it. My macro is ready. Sorry, my data app is ready. So all I need to do is just launch it one more time. Okay. And this is executing again the macro, the data app one more time. Okay, so we just need to wait. You can go inside. As you'll understand, I'm sure that you understood the logic of the data app. You have the macro templates that define the way the data app is conceived. And every time you do launch, it's going to create a macro run, which is like a set of operations that are actually like child operations from the templates. All right, they basically inherit from the same definition of the templates, of the data app templates. Okay, so you see the same steps are now completed. If I go ahead to, if I go to my account here and I refresh this view, you can see that my websites are anonymized, my account names are anonymized, my phones and faxes are also anonymized. All right. So so yeah, that's basically it. So additionally, on top of that, let's presume that because this is a data app that you can be executing on a full sandbox where you can potentially have a lot of data, right? So very important, and I just bring your attention on this. This data app is conceived in a way that certain operations are leveraging certain APIs, right? Like for this one, the job that is actually performing the extraction of the data from the data app, it's set up on REST, okay, at first. It is because we know that certain customers are very cautious about the bulk API calls they have. So out of the box, the data app provides this operation in REST, but let's presume that you are running this on a sandbox that has a lot of data and the rest actually doesn't allow you to address that problem. You can actually go ahead and feel free to modify this and change this to bulk, okay? And you would be performing this data app in bulk, okay? That is one important thing to bear in mind. There are different optimizations. This is one of those optimizations that you can perform to the data app itself. And also, something else that you can consider is that so far I have been demonstrating how you can actually modify the templates of the data apps, but you have actually no restriction on going into the macro run this is actually the execution of the job itself, and going into the particular job that has been executed. So this is like the child object of the template, all right? And you have no constraint on actually editing that specific operation, all right? So far, I have decided to edit the template themselves, but if by any reason you would like to address individually the child operations, you can feel free to do so, because there is no restriction on that sense. You would be able to modify the child operations. You just have to be cognizant that modifying the child operations of that data app will not have any incidence on the template, right? As long as you know that, you're good to go, right? So those are basically some two or three or four examples of optimizations or customizations that you can perform on the FSA data app. Of course, there are much more. There can be much more that can be done, but you have a data app that is actually easy to install, and it can be operational. Of course, you I presume that for most use cases and most of you who are customers, Autosova customers already, you will want to adapt those to make them fit your own business needs, right? But at least you have a good start point to proceed and start optimizing that, all right? So right now, let me just go back to this, right? So just as a reminder, right, the scope of the data app is the contact, the leads, the user, only portal and community users, event, only the events related to the objects in the scope, the task, only those related to the objects in the scope as well, and then the history of the objects in the scope, and the attachments and feed items of contact related to contacts and leads that are targeted by this, okay? So these are the jobs that are performed as part of the structure of the data app. And I see that we still have 5 more minutes. So I would like to leave some time for questions. If we have any questions about the data app, please feel free to ask. Okay. So it's well, we wait for the questions. So feel free to send any. Just as a reminder, right? How is this data app? How does the data app works? It's composed of 5 jobs. So reminder, to extract the data that is going to be anonymized. Then you anonymize the data in Odaseva. Then third step, you propagate that data back to Odaseva. Fourth, you extract the data for deletion. And finally, you delete the data. Okay. So we'll see if there are any questions coming in. Okay, well, I hope that no questions means that everything was so clear that there are no questions. So I think we can wrap up this webinar today. So I thank you everyone for joining. Oh, there is a question. Can you add a random value? Yes, you can. And the anonymization patterns that are provided allow you to do so. So you can generate random values if you wish. Actually, there is thank you for asking this question. There is actually a reference guide that you can refer to with the full list of anonymization patterns. So random is one of those. So you can generate random strings of characters, including characters, numbers. It really depends. So you have a handful of libraries and a handful of patterns. So if you're interested, that's something you could totally achieve. Another question, what about custom objects? Yeah, well, no limitation. You can include custom objects as part of the data app. The way it was designed to fit any Salesforce organization. So Salesforce organizations, when you install them, they don't have custom objects, but of course it works with custom objects, and the way you proceed is exactly the same, meaning that you have to go to each individual job, and you need to declare the API name of the objects as well as the API name of the fields. And there you go. That's all you need to do. So yeah, custom objects are supported. Okay, well, I think it's time to go. So I thank you everyone for having joined this webinar session. It's going to be published. It is going to be published, and you will be getting some emails to remind you how to check it and how to find it. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining one more time, and have a great day.